was centered on memory. It was centered on memory. So as you already know, common when it comes to the dictionary definition of memory, is also fit within this aspect. You trying to memory is more or less like someone trying to recall an information. But in psychology, memory goes beyond recalling or recollecting. So memory goes beyond recalling information. So basically, memory has to do with, we normally say it is a cognitive process of what? Of encoding, okay, storing, processing and retrieval of what? Of information. I think when you move to the next slide, yeah. So these are the main stages of what? Of memory. Memory is the cognitive process of what? Of encoding, storing, and retrieval of what? Of information. Retrieval of information. So one might ask, when you say encoding, storage, and what have you, what are they in that regard? Yeah. So I've already talked to you about the fact that with memory, it has to do with re-encoding, storing, and retrieving information. So one might think, okay, when you say encoding, what is it all about? So encoding has to do with you trying to convert information from the environment into a template within our mental process or brain. So with encoding, you pick up information from the environment, and the information you pick up from the environment, you are trying to convert it in a way in which your brain could understand. So that's what I mean by you are encoding something. Then storage, as its name simply implies, we will delve more into it later. Storage has to do with after you've translated the information into a language in which your mind or the brain understands, it is then stored. It is then stored in a particular place, so that later when you need it, you can go there and recollect that information. So later, after it has been stored and you go in there to retrieve or recollect that sort of information, is what is referred to as retrieval. So memory in itself goes through several forms. And we have different models. When I say models, people have developed different theories to explain how memory in itself works, how encoding, storage, and retrieval works. So we have, within your level, I would expose you to two main models propounded by certain individuals, which we'll delve more into it later. So apart from memory, its processes, we also have its stages. Some school of thought believe that memory goes into several stages. We have the sensory stage, which is the sensory memory, then the short-term memory, and the long-term memory, which we would also delve into it more later. And sometimes memory can be grouped into types. We have implicit memory, which is also referred to as procedural. We have explicit memory, which we have under explicit, we have two types, semantic and episodic. And we will delve more into these things as we move on. So individuals or all school of thought, they believe that in terms of memory, it goes through series of stages. So that's what I mean by it is sequential. When we say something is sequential, it means that it goes through one stage, then the other stage, and so on until it reaches the last stage. So all the various school of thought believes that memory goes through series of stages in that regard. And the first stage they talk about has to do with the fact that we have the sensory memory stage, Then afterwards, we'll move on to the short-term memory. Then the last stage is the long-term memory. So within the sensory memory, for instance, as the name implies, sensory, sense. So it means that information from the 5 sense organs is stored within the sensory memory. So it means for you to see something and know that, oh, this is color black, this is color red, the information going to the brain needs to be first stored within the sensory memory, because your eyes, which is a sense organ, has picked the information from your environment. So it needs to go to, so that means it will be converted into a way in which your brain could understand. That's the encoding. Then afterwards, it will be stored within your sensory memory for a while. Then later, it will move to your short-term memory if you do something to it. Then again, when you do something to it again, it will then move to your long-term memory, which we normally say with your long-term memory, it is relatively permanent. When information gets there, it is relatively permanent. So we'll delve more into these stages as we move on. So when it comes to the sensory memory, we usually say that it has unknown capacity, and the duration, it has a duration of less than a second. So when we say it has unknown capacity, it means that the sensory memory can store large amount of information, but information, attending to information is quite brief. So that's why we are saying the duration is less than a second. And among all the sensory information, when I say sensory information, I want you yourself, this, I don't want to say an assignment, because last time when I talked about the fact that, okay, it's an assignment, but it's a take home thing that I wanted you to do. Some of you thought I wanted you to do it and forward them to me. So I would say this is a personal study that I want you yourself to do. You will never know where you come across it. Find out the various sensory information and what type of information these sensory information processes. So I'll give you 2 of them. We have, for instance, auditory information, also referred to as acoustic information. Acoustic, ACOUSTIC, acoustic or auditory information. And its main function is that it processes what information that we hear. It processes information that we hear. So acoustic information, for instance, goes into the sensory memory because it is processed by the ears. The ears are the one that will process such information. Then it will get to the brain and store that way at the sensory memory. Then another sensory information that we have is visual information. It means your eyes would pick those information. So it means visual information has to do with things that we could see. Your eyes will pick them and process it, and it will be stored briefly at your sensory memory, which is found within your brain. So find the other 3 types of sensory information and find out the type of information that they process. in that regard. You never know where you come across it. Okay. So among all the sensory information, for instance, visual information is considered to be the one that the duration is very, very short. The duration is very, very short. So it means with visual information, if you don't really pay attention that well, you might lose the information. So a typical example is, let's compare visual information with acoustic or auditory information. I just said something. Maybe your mind and focus wasn't all that within what I was saying, but you are able to pick some information out of it. Then you ask your colleague, I don't know whether most of you understand Chi, but when someone doesn't really get what the person said, you could see the person could get some small information out of it and even ask, Kwame, say. Okay, but let's pick a scenario whereby I am looking at my right visual field, or I've turned my head at my right hand side. Then something was happening. Let's say there was no noise or whatsoever, but something was happening at my left hand side. So long as I have tuned my eyes to my right side of my right side view, whatever thing that is happening at my left view, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to process it and know what really happened or transpired. But with auditory, even when your mind and focus is not there, you're able to hear some minute of certain things some people are saying when you are close. So that should tell you that. So that's why we are saying that the duration of visual information is very, very, very limited as compared to the other as compared to the other sensory information. Okay. Then after information has been processed within the sensory memory briefly for a brief period, the information later moves to the short-term memory when something has been done to it, which we'll delve more into it later. So remember I told you memory goes through certain stages. So after information is stored within the sensory memory, it needs to be transferred from the sensory memory to the next memory, which is the short-term memory. And we normally say that the short-term memory has limited capacity. When you compare the sensory memory with the short-term memory, you remember I said the sensory memory has unknown capacity, it is unlimited. But with the short-term memory, we know that its capacity is quite limited. Its storage capacity is quite limited. So normally we have something known as the magic 7. We normally say that the sensory memory has a storage capacity of 7 plus or minus 2. What this implies is that it can store about 5 to 9 items at a go. About 5 to 9 items at a go, which we'll delve more later when I say it can store. So for now, just know that it can store up to 5 to 9 items at a go. And I would explain why I have created this sort of analogy later. Okay. Then with a long-term memory, we normally say that it has an unlimited capacity. So that means it can store large form of information for an unlimited duration. So it means that it can store large information for several periods or years. So that's why we normally say that when information moves from the short-term memory to the long-term memory, we normally say it is relatively permanent. So the ultimate goal of memory is that we want the information to stick at where? At the long-term memory, so that later you can go there and retrieve them. So that's why there are certain information it's hard for you to forget. It's hard for you to forget because you've done something to it over and over, and it has been stored where? At the long-term. So always you are able to retrieve it from your long-term memory to create connections to it. Yeah. So it means when information gets to the long-term memory, it is relatively permanent unless due to certain things, accidents or injuries or whatever in the brain that might make you forget these information. Okay. So I'm moving on. So as I've always been saying, if there are certain questions, use the emoji to raise up your hand. I'll give you opportunity to ask your question. So as I earlier opined, sensory memory, for instance, the duration is brief. So that's why I've indicated sensory input are forgotten almost instantly, like the visual information and auditory information that I use as an example. You can see that if you're not paying a special attention to visual information, you are more likely to lose such information because your focus and everything wasn't there. Again, if you are bombarded with several visual information coming to you at a go simultaneously, sometimes you're more likely to forgo others, or you wouldn't pay attention to others and focus on other things. Let's say you studying and yet at the same time there's some noise happening to you. Let's say the air condition, there's a small noise happening. You were studying during lesson time, whereby other students from different classrooms were also making noise. So let's say you had a face-to-face lecture, and a week or a day before that face-to-face, your lecturer told you, oh, during the lecture, there'll be a small quiz. So during that day, you were in class. You wanted to read about a new material, which you forgot to read. And you realize that, oh, the fan is making some slight noise. The other classrooms too, students are making noise. You still want to learn this information. So that means you are bombarded with several information, sensory information. So what do you do? Since you are bombarded with several visual information, you are more likely to forget or distract yourself from certain things. So that means you are more likely to forget some of these information at a go. So it means that when you are bombarded with too many sensory information, forgetfulness is what is really key. You are more likely to forget and also attend to certain things, some few things. All right. So we normally say that a long time ago, we thought the sensory memory could hold the 7 plus or minus 2, which I said it holds 5 to 9 items. But modern items were able to help us know that nope. What we normally do is that we do something known as chunking. So when I say it is able to hold 5 to 9 items, let's use this example. Let's say these are nonsense syllables. When I say nonsense syllables, they don't make sense. They are words that really doesn't make sense. So for you to grasp these things, you can see that these alphabets are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 letters. When you're supposed to recall these things, sometimes it becomes hard for you to recall because the letters are a lot. So we are saying when the letters are around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but the moment you're called to recall this word, F, B, I, C, I, C, I, A, there are 5 letters. So it will be easy for you to recall when the letters are F, B, I, C, I, A, I. There are 6 letters. You're able to recall. When they are also F, B, I, C, I, A, I, R. Though the letters are a lot, but you are likely to also want to recall. But any letter beyond 7, it will be hard for you to recall because your short-term memory has reached its capacity. That's what we are saying. So this, at first, this was the analogy most memory researchers put up. So some individuals came out just to refute this analogy and also talk about the fact that then why is it that some people or most people are able to even recall long lists of letters which doesn't make sense, but they're able to recall it at an easier rate. So that was when the term chunking came to mind. We're able to know that sometimes even when the letters don't make sense and they are long, and people wants to record, they do something to it. They chunk by grouping these letters into groups. So a chunking could be, if I am the one who really wants to record this, I will then put FBI as one group. So that FBI will be what? Will be one capacity 1. Then CIA will be what? 2, capacity 2. Then IRS will be what? Capacity 3. Then NSA will be what? Capacity 4. So it means I've been able to what? I've been able to group these 12 letters into what? Into 4 groups, so that my STM, the short-term memory, could still hold it because of the 7 plus or minus 2. It can still hold it. So that was when most memory researchers were able to understand that usually when letters or certain information are really a lot, and we really want to recall them, we do the chunking by grouping familiar things in groups so that it will be easy for us to what? Recall. Another example which you are more familiar with is if you really want to recollect maybe your husband, fiancé, girlfriend, or even a friend's parent or relative's number. Let's say as a gentleman, you met a lady with her for the first time, and you took the person's contact. You've been calling the person for a while, and you realize, okay, I need to begin to memorize this person's contact of her. So let's say this is a contact of someone, 0244155826, and you want to recall so that you wouldn't always necessarily go to your contact list and search for the person's name before calling, but you can easily type the person's number offhand. So you could see these are how many words? I think they are roughly 10 numbers, which goes beyond the magic 7 plus or minus 2. That means 5 to 9. letters or numbers. So for you to recall them, what do we normally do? You will see that you usually what group them. So that's why even when you are called to mention someone's number, even the way you mention it tells us that, okay, that's how you did what you learned it, or you encoded them in your brain. You start 0244. So that means the 0244, you've grouped these numbers as one unit. Then you move on 155. That means you've grouped 155 as another unit. Then 826. You don't mention it like 0, 2, 4, 4, 1, 5, 5, because that's not how you encoded and process it within your mind. So always when I mention it, you group them. Some people would group them as this 024, 415, 5826. So in most situations, when we want to recall large information, we group them so that it will be easier for us to be able to recollect or retrieve them later. So that's what we mean by chunking. And these are some of the mechanisms we do for information to move from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. These are some of the tricks we do to move information from the short-term to the long-term memory. That's chunking. Another mechanism that usually we use often is something known as mnemonics and acronyms. Sorry. Mnemonics and acronyms. So let me start with the acronyms. So me, for instance, back in JHS and SHS, I didn't like social studies often a lot. So usually what I would do is that I would use acronyms and mnemonics as a means to easily recall the points. So can anyone give me any social studies topic or question that he or she remembers so that we can do this? Maybe any clue, any idea, any social studies question? Or let's say, let me use the psychology one. Let's say we want to, I want you to write an essay on the fact that I want you to describe the goals of psychology. Describe the goals of psychology. So you know the points for these things to be 4 points. Describe, explain, predict, and control. So someone can decide to form an acronym out of these points. So DEPCO, DEPCO. So someone who wants to easily recall this thing will rather make it DEPCO, meaning the D stand for describe, E will stand for to explain, P will stand for to predict, then CO will stand for to control, DEPCO. So that's how in most situations, people use some of these acronyms as a means to move information to their long-term memory so that they could easily create a connection and recall. Another one that I said is mnemonics. With mnemonics, we form rhymes out of large chunk of information. A typical example is back in JHS and SHS, whenever you were told to recall the 9 planets, by 9 planets, we use certain rhymes as a means to recall them. My very eyes may just see under 9 planets. I don't know whether any of you came across this popular rhyme.
Yes,
My very eyes.
we did. Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. Yes.
So yeah, so that's a typical what mnemonics. So that the moment you type this, you could easily connect and know the various 9 planets and know mine means Mercury, Venus, Earth, and so on. So these are some of the means or ways and means in which we were using to recall large amount of information. Another one was another mnemonics that we normally use in science was whenever we are told to recall the various elements. Some of you have different rhymes, but I remember my rhyme was hello, hello, little bluebird can now operate fishing nets, Nana Magay, and so on and so forth. So the moment you know hello, hello, then you know that okay, the hello, hello is hydrogen, helium. So you know then it goes in that fashion. Why? Because rhyming it makes you know the various elements in a sequence so that you wouldn't chew them in your mind in that regard. But when you rhyme it, you're able to connect and know, oh, the first H stands for hydrogen, the other one stands for helium. Then what have you? Okay. So please, any questions so far? Okay. So as I said, these mechanisms are the mechanisms we normally use to move information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. So the short-term memory is usually, from theoretical sense, is usually considered to be also known as working memory.
Someone will cry today. Someone.
Okay, it's also known to be known as the working memory. Why? Because it is always working. It is always processing what? Information. So at the moment, me teaching, your short-term memory is what? Is processing whatever information that is really happening. So it means that the working memory within the short-term memory is always active, and that's why we call it what? The working memory in the short-term memory. Okay. So in terms of processing of information, as I earlier told you, we have 3 key things: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding, storage, and what? And retrieval. So during these processes, attention is really key. If you don't pay attention to it, then sometimes it wouldn't even lead up to storage or retrieval. So attention is really, really key for encoding. For one to encode, even attention is what? Is important. For encoding to take place, attention is important. For retrieval to also happen, attention is important. For storage to also take place, attention is important. So every step, attention is what? Is really, really, really important in that regard. Then other things also goes into it. So as I earlier told you about encoding, encoding has to do with you converting or transforming the information into a mental construct that can be stored in the brain. So when you read, delve more, this is not the main focus, but I don't know whether anatomy and physiology you've been taught. We normally say that even when for information to move from the eyes to the brain, you could see that certain processes needs to happen because the information going to the brain, it needs to be converted into something before it gets to the brain. That's the same thing. That's what I mean by encoding. So in science, we will tell you, oh, for you to see something, your eyes will pick that information as what? As a light ray. So we call it light rays. Then it will move through your eyes until it gets to the optic nerve. Then it will be converted from light energy to electrochemical energy. Then the moment it is converted into a chemical, it will then move to where? To the brain. So it means for information to move into the brain, it needs to be converted into a form in which the brain understands. And that's the encoding, like it's being converted into chemical, electrochemical. That means encoding has taken place. Then afterwards, it will get to the brain and it will be stored in one of the memory stage, which is the sensory memory. So that's how encoding takes place. So as I earlier gave you, I've given you the two main types of encoding, but we have that's acoustic encoding. So as I said, acoustic has to do with sound. Sound. So it processes all auditory information. Me speaking at the moment, you are hearing something. So it means that those things you are hearing, your brain is what is encoding it into a way in which you would understand. So it means the information first will hit your ears. So your ears will pick this information, then will convert it into electrochemical energy, send it to a portion within the brain, especially your temporal lobe. There's an area there. Then it will be stored at your sensory memory within that sort of what? Brain area. So that's how acoustic information encoding happens. Your ears will pick the information, then convert it into electrochemical. So when it is converted into electrochemical, that means it has been encoded or it has been converted into a language in which the brain understands for it to be stored there. Then we have visual information. Visual information, as its name implies, it means that it would capture things that we see. So as I'm teaching you right now, apart from you hearing my voice, you're also keeping track of what? Of these words. Yet at the same time, you're also keeping track of what? Of these images. So all these things will be processed by the eyes or will be translated from light energy into what? Into electrochemical energy, so that it would then move to the brain for interpretation. So when it is converted from light energy to electrochemical, then it means it has been encoded, it has been transformed into a language in which the brain can pick it and store it. Okay. So as I said, read on the other types of encoding that you know of. Then we also have another form of encoding known as elaborative encoding. Elaborative encoding. So I'm reading. It connects or relates new input to existing memories, which in turn makes the new input easier to remember. Easier to remember. So what we are saying is that an example that I earlier gave was a teenager remembering the name of what? Of a hunter. So the child would first for the child to remember that, oh, this person is a hunter, the child needs to connect previous things he or she has learned. Maybe the child has learned in cartoons, whereby this person was using a gun and was hunting animals. So the moment the child is called upon to maybe remember maybe a relative friend who just came, his name, Hunter, the child is able to connect previous stored information with the new one. So let me reaffirm this. I'll give you a practical example. Let's say a teenager came in, was around, whereby his father got a visitor. Okay. Then his father's visitor reached out to this teenager and said, "Oh, hello, how are you doing? My name is Hunter. So I'm your father's friend. Anytime you see me around, you can what? Or I'm in this company. So when you come around anytime for any help or assistance that you need." So this teenager wants to recall or store this man's name, because this is the first time he has heard of Hunter as someone's name. But due to certain cartoons and everything that he has watched, he knows this cartoon person who is a hunter in real life. When we say someone is a hunter, you know what I'm talking about. So this teenager wants to recall the father's friend name. So what would he do? He would then relate his father's friend name to the previous movie or cartoon that he has watched, because with that he has already stored it in mind. So that anytime he wants to recollect, oh, this man who last time he came here, his name, he could easily retrieve at the back of his memory and know, oh, it's Hunter, because of he connecting it with a familiar cartoon that he has watched. So that's a typical elaborative encoding. Okay. Then the next one is semantic encoding. Semantic encoding. It focuses on meaning of an input, how it might be applied. So with semantic encoding, you are not relating new information to already stored information, but rather whatever information that you want to encode and store in your memory, you want to find meaning, what it means. So let's say you want to store a gun. This is the first time you've heard of a gun. You want to store it in mind. Instead of you just focusing on, oh, a gun is a gun. So you want to store that, okay, anytime you see this is a gun, you want to find meaning. What is this thing used for? What do we normally use this thing for? The purpose of this object. So that later you can easily connect it and say, oh, this is a gun. It is used for what? For shooting, maybe for hunting. Then put it in a fashion. All right. So that's the difference between semantic encoding and elaborative encoding. Let me erase these things and move on. Okay, so I'm moving on. I'm saying encoding happens in the STM. So when I say STM, it means the short-term memory. You know, we have the three main types of memory stages: the sensory memory, which is the first, then short-term memory and long-term memory. So we are saying encoding happens in the short-term memory, where the main process is rehearsal of acoustic information. So when we currently know what acoustic information is, that means auditory information, where the main process is rehearsal of acoustic information. Even words read on a screen are sounded out as they are encoded. So it means that even for you to store this thing in your memory, you first read, and when you are reading, you can pay attention to it. You see that even in the course of you reading, there's a silent voice also reading the thing aloud as you begin to read. There's a silent voice also reading the thing aloud. So that means you trying to process these things into your memory. You acoustically encode it, because there's a sound voice also reading the thing aloud to you, helping you to encode. That's currently, you know what encode is all about. Encode and store the information into a particular memory storage. That's a short-term memory. Okay. So it means most of the information are acoustically encoded. That's what basically I want you to know about. So once the memory has been encoded, that means it has been converted from its previous energy to, say, electrochemical energy. What is it done? It is then stored. It is then stored in especially the long-term memory. So once it has been encoded through rehearsal, we'll delve more into rehearsal, through you rehearsing or you using chunking, mnemonics, acronyms, and what have you. The final thing is that it is then stored at a long-term memory. All right. So there's enough evidence to attest to the fact that information stored at the for information to be stored at the long-term memory, semantic processing is really key. When I say semantic processing is really key, semantics has to do with you getting understanding out of the thing that you are trying to process. Semantics. So it means that ideally, for information to move into the long-term memory, semantic processing is important. You need to understand the information that you are trying to process. So that's why even in academic field, we normally say that you chewing and pouring is what is bad, because when you chew and pour, you're able to briefly store the information. So when you chew and pour, it means the information gets to the short-term memory. It doesn't go to the long-term memory. But the moment you understand the concepts, and that's what I've always been saying about this course, that understand the concept, so that whatever way it is tweaked, you are able to answer it in that manner, because it has been stored at the long-term memory, so you can easily call it when you understand the concept. So you trying to understand the concept is what is referred to as semantic processing. Semantic processing. Also, for you to retrieve, some people, apart from they using semantic encoding to do it, remember we talk about elaborative encoding, if you remember elaborative encoding. Elaborative encoding also helps information to move to the long-term memory. If you create association, you want to learn a new information, like me saying, okay, this teenager wanted to learn the name Hunter. Then what did the teenager did? He was able to connect this new name to maybe a movie that he watched or a cartoon that he watched, whereby this supposedly hunter was shooting animals and everything. So he was able to create that sort of what link or association, so that anytime he wants to recall his father's friend name, he can easily go back to mind and link it to that movie he watched. All right. So doing that also helps information to move into the long-term memory. So in terms of the long-term memory, for instance, we have two main types of memories that are stored at the long-term memory. We have two main types of memories that are stored. We have explicit memory and implicit memory. Explicit memory and implicit memory. So explicit memory is also known as declarative memory. And under explicit, we have two types, which is semantic and episodic. Semantic and episodic memory. So let's find out what these two types are. So semantic memory normally stores information. It stores basically factual information. Let me put this in that regard. Factual information and information that we have learned. So general knowledge information. So someone is annotating or scribbling on the screen. So please put a halt to it. The person is still doing it. I think maybe it's by a mishap or something. He's using a blue ink to scribble on the screen. So please. Or let me prevent anyone from doing that. Disable, yeah. Okay. So a typical example is the moment I ask you a factual information like, who is the current president of Ghana? It is a factual information. So it is an information which has been stored within your memory. So you know that, okay, Nana Akufo-Addo is the president of the current president of Ghana. So you are able to spell out that because it has been stored, it has been permanently stored where? At your semantic memory, which is found within your long-term memory. Or when I ask you, what is psychology? For you to give me the right definition of psychology, that means you've accumulated, it is an accumulated knowledge that has been stored at the semantic memory. Then let's find out what episodic memory is all about. Episodic memory has to do with you storing personal information. So we normally call it, it stores autobiographical information. Autobiographical information is the same as me saying personal information about you or lived experiences that you've gone through. So when I ask you to recollect things that transpired when you were doing your mid semester. So when I asked, oh, how was the mid semester? Some of you were able to recollect and give me the incidents that really happened. That's a typical episodic memory. Or when I ask you your 20th birthday, or say your teenage birthday, what really happened? For you to give me incidents of what really happened, or the first lecture that we had this semester, what transpired, for you to give me some information about it is a typical episodic memory. It's a personal experience that you've gone through. All right. Let me mute all of you. Oh, Mr. Theo, I keep on muting, but it seems you mute Unmute yourself anytime I do it. So please. Again. All right, so that's all when it comes to explicit memory. Then the next one is implicit. Implicit memory, also known as procedural memory. Also known as procedural memory. So they store things that we are not consciously aware of. But these behaviors also shape our behavior. Yeah, so a typical example is they store certain skill sets information. So you know, currently, let's say those who drive. Currently, when I ask you, I don't even have to ask you. When we put you on the steering wheel, you are able to just start the machine, navigate your way out and move it without any accident. Why? Because you've built up certain skills over the years of you driving, whereby you know what to do, when to step on the brake, and when to take your leg off the brake and accelerate or change gears, those who normally use manual and what have you, because you've built up certain skill sets over the years. And these skill sets you've built over the years are stored within the implicit or procedural memory, which is also found at the long-term memory. So that anytime you find yourself in that sort of situation, you use it. Another example is those who normally ride bicycle, the same thing. Or you playing football, knowing when an opponent is coming towards you, when to dribble, how to dribble, and what have you. You've built up those skill sets. So that's why some people normally say that, oh, Lionel Messi, those who are football fanatics, we normally say, hey, Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, oh, they are genius. We normally say they are geniuses not because of the fact that, oh, they know book. Not necessarily so, but because of the fact that, hey, they've built up these skill sets for a longer period. In terms of they have these skills that they're able to dribble past their opponent, know how to score, and what have you. Hence, these things have been stored at the implicit or procedural memory, and they are using it always. Okay. So please, any question? Any question? Any questions so far? Hello. Vivo X6, or it was by mistake that you unmuted yourself. Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, then I'm moving on. So the next one is you remember I said from the beginning that when it comes to memory, we have two main models or theories that explains how memory works. So the first model was developed by someone known as they were two, Atkinson and Shiffrin. They developed this model in 1968. In 1968. Then later, Badley and Hitch realized that, oh no, there are some weaknesses or limitations in the model developed by Atkinson and Shiffrin. So they also came up with another model to explain how memory in itself works. then later other proponents also brought their own model to explain how memory really works. But our main focus will be on these two models. How we memorize information and all that. Okay. So the first one, as I said, is the multi-store model. So according to Atkinson and Shiffrin, memory is also sequential. So it means it moves through certain stages, 3 stages, according to them. So they were the ones who first emphasized that in memory, we have the sensory memory, short-term memory, then the long-term memory. So for information to move, for us to retrieve, encode, or store anything, it goes through these stages. So first of all, information from the environment needs to first hit the sensory memory. Then through attention and rehearsal, the information later moves to the short-term memory. Then again, through rehearsal, the information moves to the long-term memory. So it means that according to them, if for information to move from the short-term memory to the long-term memory, if the person don't attend to the information, doesn't pay attention to the information, and also rehearse. So when I say rehearse, like let's say you want to learn. So you want to learn that, okay, Atkinson and Shiffrin, they were the ones who developed this model. What do? You begin to repeat these things in mind. Oh, Atkinson and Shiffrin, they are the ones who developed this thing. Atkinson, you repeat them for a while. That's what I mean by rehearsal. So that it would temporarily be stored at the short-term memory. So that's why those who don't really like learning early, when it is getting to, say, a week or day before examination, they burn midnight candles, then you will see them repeating these words. Some of them would some people will say, oh, maybe some paper so why are they doing that? When they learn, they want to rehearse by writing what they've learned again within a book or a sheet of paper to see if they can reproduce whatever thing they learned. So you see, you would observe them doing it repeatedly. That's a typical rehearsal that they are doing. And we have 2 types of it, which we'll delve more later. Okay. So it means if you don't attend and also rehearse, displacement would occur. So when we say displacement would occur, it means that you would lose the information. The same thing, information coming from the environment to the short-term, to the sensory memory. If you don't pay attention to it, decay would happen. It means that you will lose the information. So the information wouldn't even get to a sensory memory for it to move to these stages. Then again, after the information has been stored at the short-term memory, what we are saying is that you're supposed to again do rehearsal. We have another type of rehearsal that needs to be done so that the information will later move to the long-term memory for us to say, oh, it has been stored there permanently or relatively permanently. Okay. Eraser. So these things that I'm saying, I've already put them in writing. put them in writing so that I'll share the slides with you so that you have a clue as to what I'm talking about. I'll put them, so this is the thing that I'm saying. I've already put them in writing. So let's go through the various characteristics and functions of each of these memories. So it means that with a short-term, with the sensory memory, what we are saying is that it has unknown capacity, as I earlier said, but the duration is also what? Small. So you can see that if you don't really pay attention, well, you will lose the information because the duration of the sensory information is approximately 500 milliseconds. 500 milliseconds is more or less like half of a second. So imagine even a second, okay, 1 second, and we are saying half of it. So that's what we are saying. If you don't pay attention very well to such information, you will lose it. And it wouldn't go to even the sensory memory, short-term memory, and what have you. It wouldn't go through such stages. Then what we're also saying is that with a short-term memory, as I earlier said, it has limited capacity. It can store only small number of items. So in most situations, the information are chunked. And you also know what the chunking is all about, as I've already explained. And again, if you don't pay attention to it well to here, you might lose it. So within 30 seconds, when the information moves to the short-term memory, within 30 seconds, if you don't do something to it by repeatedly rehearsing, that means you will lose the information. That's what basically we are saying. So after the information has moved from the sensory memory to the short-term memory, we are saying if you don't begin to suddenly attend to the information by rehearsing the information, you will lose the information when it gets to the short-term memory. You lose it. So constant rehearsal is really essential for information to stick within the short-term memory for a while. Then we are saying information at the short-term memory is stored phonetically. Phonetically is the same as me saying it is stored acoustically. Remember the analogy that I used, whereby I said, even when you are reading these words, let's say there's a new information that you've come across altogether. You want to store it at a short-term memory. So what do? You begin to rehearse them by reading it aloud, silently reading them aloud. So you can even practice it. You see, whenever you are trying to rehearse this new information, there's a silent voice also reading it aloud. That's what I mean by acoustic. You are acoustically what? Processing or encoding this information. So it means for information to be stored, it needs to be acoustically what? Encoded, and sometimes visually done. But always all the information are acoustically encoded at the short-term memory. All right. Then with the long-term memory, as we earlier said, it has unlimited storage capacity. It has unlimited. It can store large information. Any large information, it can store it. Someone said he or she can't see it. Then it might be your device. So kindly, JJOM, I think it might be your device. So adjust it well. All right. Then within the long-term memory again, we are saying that for information to stick within the long-term memory, it's semantically encoded. It doesn't acoustically or phonetically encode the information, but rather it semantically does it. And as I earlier explained about semantics, it means that you are supposed to find meaning out of the information that you really wanted to move to the long-term memory. Get meaning, understand the information. If you understand the information well, the information will stick at the long-term memory. That's what basically we are trying to say. And the information stored at the long-term memory is relatively permanent. So the reason I'm saying relatively permanent is that some people can lose the information, but the only time you can lose the information is when there's these things, interference, which would explain later what it basically means, or there's decay, or there's by accident, and what have you. We'll delve more into it, how people can lose information. We'll delve more into it, how people can lose information. Some people are sending me messages that they can't hear me. Is it all of you that really can't hear or something? Because I can see my mic also moving, telling me that everything is perfect.
Please no, we can hear you.
Okay, then please, those who can't hear, kindly adjust your device well. All right. So remember I said, in terms of rehearsal, we have two main types of rehearsal. So the first one is elaborative rehearsal. And elaborative rehearsal normally happens at the short-term memory. So this area under the multi-store model, whereby I said, after the information moves to the short-term memory, there should be constant rehearsal within 30 seconds, or else you lose the information, or else the displacement or decay would happen. So the constant rehearsal that needs to be done here is what is referred to as maintenance rehearsal. And let's find out what maintenance rehearsal is. It refers to the simple repetition type of rehearsal that keeps a stimulus through the STM. And it is not thought to be effective for long-term memory. So, as I said, when you want to read, let's say there's a new information that you've come across, that we have two types of rehearsal, maintenance rehearsal and elaborative rehearsal. You want it to stick at the STM. So what do? You keep on repeating this information as it is. So in simple language, maintenance rehearsal is more or less like Woody Baba, Baba Die. You keep on repeating them. So we normally call it, in psychology, maintenance rehearsal is sometimes also referred to as rote learning. Simple repetition of what? Of the words or the information as a way to what? As a way to remember the information later. So this is a temporary thing that helps you to recall, because the information will be stored at the short-term memory. And information stored at the short-term memory is brief, it's not permanent. So this is the first rehearsal technique that we normally do. Then later, what you do is that after you've done maintenance rehearsal, because it is normal, especially when you are reading, you acoustically encode by reading it aloud, which is a form of maintenance rehearsal. But after you've done the maintenance rehearsal, you're supposed to do something for it to move to the long-term memory. And that is where the elaborative rehearsal comes in. So it refers to thinking about the meaning of the stimulus item, like a word, and the semantic element may be involved in what? In the long-term memory. So it means that after you've read the thing aloud for a while and it is within the short-term memory, begin to find meaning out of it. So if it's about, let's say, the goals of psychology that we use, you know that, okay, to describe means gathering information. Try to understand the concept when we say gathering information, what it is all about. It means, for instance, when someone is depression, you are supposed to have gathered evidence by using your observations, trying to gather meaning out of it. then it means this time around, you are not really doing maintenance rehearsal by just reading for reading's sake, but you're trying to understand the concept by even connecting it into practical sense. Then we can say, oh, you are doing elaborative rehearsal. The moment you do that, then the information easily moves to the long-term memory for us to say, oh, it is relatively permanent. It is relatively permanent. Yeah. Hey, let me. Okay. All right. So please, again, any question so far? Any question? And I want to find out one thing. When is your revision week? Any clue? So please, any clue when your revision week is, or you don't have the calendar yet?
Please, we are starting our exams 14th April, so a week before the 14th April.
Oh, really? The exam starts 14th April. I had no idea about it. All right. So it means that by the first week of next month, we are supposed to be done with this course, which I think is doable. All right. So please, any questions so far? Okay. So let me walk you through the last model, the working memory model. Remember I said we have the multi-store model, which is what we did. So the next one is is working memory model. So the working memory model was developed by someone known as Badley and Hitch in 1974. Badley and Hitch in 1974. So they felt that the multi-modal model was too simple. They explained it memory in a simplistic manner, like, okay, the information first gets to the sensory memory, then later move to the short-term memory, then finally the long-term memory. They felt they made it too simple. It was too simplistic, but memory is not like that. There are other issues that goes into memory, which Atkinson and Shiffrin neglected. So Badley and H focus more on operations in the short-term memory. So they gave detailed information about how the short-term memory, which has a working memory in there, how it really works. Remember I said in books, the short-term memory is sometimes referred to as the working memory. Why? Because day in and day out, we are processing information day in and day out. So it means still our mind is active, the memory is active, and that's the working memory. I can say. Okay. So out of this, this is how Badley and Hitch came up with. Their main focus was on the short-term memory, the mechanisms or processes that goes on within the short-term memory. So they expanded it to help us understand basically how the working memory works. Okay, Comfort, I could see your hand is up. Jima Comfort.
Yes, sir. Please, your screen is not moving. It's still on multi.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let me. I hope it has been moved, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So as I was saying, they focus more on the short-term memory and the things that goes on within the short-term memory. And you could see that they expanded it more than Badley and H, how they talk about the short-term memory. So according to Badley and H, they believe that within a short-term memory, we have a working memory. And the working memory has certain components. It has the central executive, the visuospatial sketch pad, and the phonological loop. And these are the things that really keeps on making us process information day in and day out, everyday information. So they expansively delve into how the short-term memory really works. Okay. So let's find out what Badley and H said when it comes to things that happens within the short-term memory. So as I said, they talk about the fact that we have a subsystem or a subslate, and there are 3 in all. Later, they added another one, but I don't think within the slide I talk about it. So they talk about the fact that we have a subslate known as the central executive. The central executive. And the function of the central executive is that it monitors the activities of the other 2 subsystems, the visual sketch pad and the phonological loop. So you can see within this drawing, this is how I've done it. So the central executive will be the one that would monitor and coordinate information coming. So let's say after the sensory information has sent the information to the short-term memory, the information will first get to the central executive. Then the central executive will be the one that will decide to say, oh, this information needs to go to visuospatial sketchpad, or this type of information needs to go to phonological loop. So that's its main role. It will be the one to have to decide which information needs to go to slate B or slate B.
But on me, look at how Betty.
Okay. So that's how it works. So that's what I've indicated. It functions like the boss of the STM. Like any boss, yeah, the boss will be the one that would assign roles. So that's how the central executive works. The central executive will be the one that would assign responsibilities to visuospatial sketchpad or the phonological loop. Okay. So let's find out the phonological loop, things that it processes. So the phonological loop, it processes all auditory information. So for instance, me talking at the moment, the things that you hear, when it gets to the short-term memory, the central executive will move this auditory information to the phonological loop for it to be processed there. Again, the written materials. So these things that you see. So pay attention, well, the written material, it wouldn't get to the visuospatial sketchpad, but rather the phonological loop, because it is a written material. Remember I said, even when it comes to written material, when you are encoding, there's a little voice silently making you read the thing aloud. So it means that when it is being processed into the short-term memory, it will come like a form of auditory information. And every auditory information is processed by the phonological loop. So currently, when I say auditory information, you know what it is all about. So let me give you a typical way in which written materials are processed into the phonological loop. For it to be processed, we call something known as articulatory control system. Remember I said, when you are reading the thing aloud, there's a little voice making you read the thing aloud. That's the job of the articulatory control system. So the articulatory control system is the little voice that would read the thing aloud silently, so that it would then be stored at the store, the phonological store. So it is only written material whereby the articulatory control system becomes active to make you have this little voice, making you repeat it silently aloud in your mind. Then afterwards, it will be stored at the phonological store, which is in the phonological loop. But if it is an auditory material like me talking at the moment, you hearing these things, it would automatically be stored at the phonological store. The articulatory control system wouldn't be active. It would automatically move to the phonological store, which is within the phonological loop. So get the distinction well. All right. Then the last subsystem is the visuospatial sketchpad. So visuospatial sketchpad stores visual information and spatial awareness. So like diagrams, maps, paintings, you even recognizing someone's face, what have you. It will be stored at the visuospatial sketchpad. So for instance, these things that I've projected, every material will be stored differently in the various subsystem. So these are written materials. So when the information gets to the central executive, when this written material gets to the central executive would send this written material to the phonological loop. Then this diagram, which is more or less like a picture, when it gets to the central executive, the diagram or the central executive will then move the diagram to where? To the visuospatial sketchpad. So basically, that's what we are trying to tell you. Basically, that's how the mechanism works. When it is a written material or any auditory information, me speaking, and yet at the same time you are reading, the two things will be sent to the phonological loop. Then the diagram that I've projected, that means for you to later recollect and all that, the central executive will be the one that will move it to the visuospatial sketchpad, and it will be stored there for a while. That's how the mechanism really works in that regard. So this is a normal thing that I want you to do. In terms of multitasking, when you want to multitask, Barley and H further talk about the fact that when two different information, okay, Barley and H emphasize that when two different information is processed by the same subsystem, that's either phonological loop or visuospatial sketchpad, at the same time. So I'm repeating, when two different information is processed by the same subsystem at the same time, the person is likely to lose some of this information. So a typical example is me talking at the moment and you also reading. You are trying to read this. Maybe I'm talking or trying to explain things to you about the written material that I've projected. Instead of you to pay attention to what I am saying, then you are just reading these written materials at the same time. Then it means that you are more likely to lose one of these information. Either you are likely to lose the information that you are trying to you were reading, or you will lose what I was saying. You wouldn't be able to keep track. So that's why you sometimes say, oh, say, I didn't get what you said, because your mind and focus wasn't there. Because the written material and what I'm saying, they are both processed within where? Within the phonological loop. So if the phonological loop process these information at the same time, you are likely to lose one of them. So an assignment to test this is just a hands-on thing that I want to do, a practical thing that I want you to do yourself. You can begin to, let me move on, let me erase this. Yes, I think this will help. So there's a class test that I want you to do. Yes, a practical thing that I want you to do. I want you to pat your stomach and rub your what? Your head. When I say pat your stomach, like then in the course of you doing it, then you'll be rubbing your head. Okay. So in a rotational manner, and do it at the same time and see if it is something that is doable, whether you can do it. You will see that when you begin to do it, it will be hard for you to rub your head and pat your stomach at the same time. It will be hard. It is something that will be hard for you to do it at the same time. Why? Because these two processes, they are all stored at what? At the Visual Spatial Sketchpad simultaneously at the same time. But the moment I tell you to pat your head and say the alphabet, it is something which is what? Which is way, way easier for you to do, because you patting your head, the information will be stored at the Visual Spatial Sketchpad, and you saying the alphabet, the information will be stored at the phonological loop. So it means when two different information are stored differently in either the Visual Spatial, either the Visual Spatial Sketchpad or the phonological loop, you are able to recall them. Okay, so please, someone wanted to ask something. Yes, hello. Was it Madam Georgina? Madam Georgina, I don't know, it seems it's your network. I could barely hear you. So if you could kindly maybe type it at the chat room section, I would be able to answer you. I could barely hear what you're saying. Okay, so please, any question? Any question? Any question, please? So if there are no questions, then that'll be all for today. So Madam Georgina, I'm still waiting for your question. You can put it at the chat room section. I'll give you some few minutes. But if there are no questions, then that'll be all for today. Then that'll be all.
We get the slides too.
Yes, I'll forward it to your course rep, that's Beatrice, for you to have access to it. Okay. Then take care and see you, God willing, next weekend.
God bless you.
Amen. Bye.